Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and tonight I've got a full house. Welcome tonight, Mac
Good evening.
and Gio.
What is good, yo?
With the return of the Premier League, we'll be giving you guys our reactions from this past weekend's action, as well we'll preview some of the midweek games coming up this week. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social media, both on X and Instagram. Our handle is at @house_of_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. Let's get straight into the biggest game of the weekend. Mac, we have to go straight to you because you called it. You called how this game was going to play out and the correct score. So, of course, that was Man City 0, Arsenal 0. Straight to you, Mac. What were your overall takes on this game?
This is a sicko's taste of a game. It was a snooze fest, but if you're let's say a casual or a look casual, I like to say to some of the basketball fans out there, this is a game you weren't really enjoying. But for the sickos out there, kind of the one that want to be, I really like a hard tackle, a good defense, a structure, a solid 4-4-2. This was a juicy taste of the game. So it really comes, I feel like you're split up. Am I here for a chaos time? Or am I here for kind of the nitty gritty of the whole entire thing? So overall, exactly how I thought it would play out. The game mapped out in that direction. I thought Arsenal might have had a little bit more of the ball. Maybe there was one or two more shots on target, but overall, exactly how I anticipated to play out. I think the major takeaways of the game, as we kind of further to discuss it, are where it's kind of kept par in a lot of aspects of it. And the favor going into this game, of course, was Manchester City. With them losing, I feel like does set them back a little bit, but it doesn't shake up the title race, in my opinion, all too much, considering that the 8 points were shared. What about you, Gio? What were your first takeaways from this game?
To be quite honest with you, I agree that it was a snooze fest. I just thought Arsenal was a little. I wanted to see more from them. But it didn't really seem like they got everything going. It seemed like Man City always kind of had control of the game. They were just that last one or two passes, that final touch was just a little bit off for them to that day. But yeah, there are plenty of chances for. I feel like there were plenty of chances for City, but in terms of getting shots on target, but those final touches I thought were good. Obviously, we saw Arsenal sit back and block a lot of shots. Their offensive opportunities were few and far between. So, for us as football fans, I thought it was a snooze fest because we wanted to see more back and forth, kind of like what we saw in other games in the Premier League this weekend. We'll obviously get to those, but to be a 0-0 in a what could have been a title deciding match, you definitely want more.
And as a sicko myself, I'll gladly sort of label myself as that. I was really looking out at some of the matchups because, as you guys said, it wasn't a very exciting game to watch in terms of back and forth action, but key matchups and really see what stood out. Gio, you mentioned Arsenal were very, very good holding a defensive shape and really forcing Man City out wide, which was actually one of the weaker points, which we saw later on Pep make changes, bringing on Doku and Grealish to maybe provide some more width, considering they were comfortable in possession, but were just lacking that final third sort of incision or breakthrough. And I do have to give credit there to, I think it's fair to say, the most improved player this season. And it might come weird to maybe Mac to hear this, but I think Declan Rice easily, because he was a great, a very good Premier League player. But that game really just showed how good and how important he is to this Arsenal squad, because basically the tackles, his presence from him all around, plus of course Saliba and Gabriel, who Saliba won the player of the match, shows how good they are. And so on that itself, I do have to say, if there was a most improved player award, I would consider Declan Rice as one of those contenders. But this, of course, meant it was a tie, Max. So does this tie benefit a team, either team in particular, or what did you think about the result in general?
The team that benefited the most actually didn't play at all. It was Liverpool. You saw their title odds jump based off the respective result. So, as well as Man City drops Whereas Arsenal actually title odds stayed the same after the game. And I think a lot of it comes to the rest of the run-in. Again, we're going to go into more in depth that later. But I think because it put at least more so City out of the title race and take a step back, it was more of a benefit to Arsenal. Whereas if they come out and lost this game, exposed themselves a little bit too much, we would have seen it where if Arsenal lost this game is that they were out of the title race. So at least by keeping themselves in it, I feel like it was a good result for them. A couple points I just want to be able to bring up because a lot of the talk after this game has been around a couple different aspects where Arsenal seemed very negative. They went in to be able to lose a game or to not lose the game, and it was very poor. But looking at the reverse fixture for one, when Arsenal played Manchester City at home, Arsenal had 63% possession. And City lost the game. Did people have the idea that City came out to try to not lose that game? No, it's just the feeling around this Arsenal game where historically before they would always stick to the principles of expressing themselves and coming out. By taking that step back to, again, at least not lose this game, gain points and stay in the race seems as a step backwards by, I guess, some other viewpoints out there. And for me, I think that's the incorrect way of looking at it, where if you look against their competitors in the title race, they haven't lost a game. They've won two against Liverpool, one against Liverpool and Manchester City respectively, and tied the other game, so they didn't lose. If you're taking a look at just kind of isolating key factors against their opposition and stopping them, from Haaland, he has an expected goals against Arsenal across 3 games this season, the Community Shield and both these fixtures, a 0.25, which is the lowest against any Premier League team that he's played at least two games with so far this season. So they defensively have done a phenomenal job, as well as against those opposition playing away at Anfield and playing away at the Etihad. William Saliba won man of the match for both of those games. So if you go into the season and be like, we don't lose against these teams, we keep it par away, we win at home, I think that's a major takeaway, a major positive, and a major step forward for this team where they may not end up winning the title, but now I feel like even more so than last year, they're in that title contention going forward because they've shown they can win it, not just in the flashy fun ways, which they've been doing since the turn of the year, but in at least come into and make sure they stay part of the conversation against these tougher teams in a very different manner.
And I guess similarly, I want to toss it to Gilles because this record I'm about to read out for Man City, it puts Man U in a bad light because Man U have only been able to beat Man City have only been able to beat Man U out of the big 6 clubs, of course. They lost to Arsenal. They drew pretty much every other team, Chelsea, Liverpool, Spurs, and Arsenal as well. So that in itself gives us a different twist to this year's Pep's Man City team, where previous seasons you expect them, big games, they can control big games and really make their presence felt whenever they beat the big teams and then create that separation. But this year it feels like, Gio, unless I'm mistaken, there isn't that deciding or that separator between themselves and other big teams. What are your thoughts there?
No, I think you're absolutely spot on. I don't think, teams are as fearful as they were. Just the amount of mistakes, the amount of points lost. I think teams are just getting more comfortable with the idea that City is beatable. Pep is beatable. Haaland, yes, a great signing, but are we starting to figure Haaland out? Is Haaland really who he thinks he is, or who the scouts, kind of made him to think he is? He's very good. He's very strong on the ball, but there's still a lot of technical skill that he lacks. There's a lot of, running into space skills that he lacks. Seeing the game, he still lacks a lot. So playing in a system, maybe playing in a more free-flowing system, maybe on a team like, I hate to say it, but a team like Tottenham where he's able to run free and they're playing a very high line and they're dumping the ball constantly, maybe he flourishes a little more there in that sense, but, he obviously lacks the setup there. There's plenty of chances that he's missed that we've, in our group chats, and our soccer group chats, have been in all that a striker of his capability and his level has missed, and we just can't believe it. So, I think City are now considered human, especially if they lose this title race. I think it's just more teams are more comfortable with the fact that they have to face City the following week.
Yeah, and I think that in itself it tells a big story. Although in this game, and I think we kind of all agree there were quite a few players missing. I did want to point that out that Martinelli didn't start this game. Actually, just came on towards the end. Saka definitely didn't look at his best. He had to come off as well. But on the flip side, no Stones or Walker. Nathan Ake had to go off. Ederson didn't play in this game either for Man City. So it left us a little bit sort of itching for that. I guess big names against big names in a big occasion, and ultimately as well, there was a lot of fouls, not a lot of yellow cards handed out. So for me personally, something that I didn't like as much. But ultimately, do we? I guess want to. I did want to ask you as well though. Same question that I asked you, Mac. Out of these two teams, this result, do you think Arsenal are sort of more happy to get the draw, or was this a missed opportunity for Man City to sort of get the win and also take the points away from City? From Arsenal in this result.
I think Gio, you cut out there. My apologies. I think you're.
Sorry.
Sorry, he was referencing to you. Just be able to confirm. Do you feel like Arsenal? This was a missed who won out from this draw? Was there more of a winner from this draw? Who's going back to you on that?
Yeah, sorry, just cut out there a little. No, it's definitely Man City here. They definitely lost an opportunity here. Like now they're sitting third out of the three in the title race. Arsenal are quite happy with this draw, knowing that they had the injuries they had. Is there a little bit of disappointment? Yes, because there are injuries to the backline even during the game that I feel like they could have attacked a little more and could have pressed the wound a little more. But, I think Arteta was just quite happy with the fact that they were staying in front of the ball and nothing was getting by. It wasn't much of a day for David Raya by any means, but I think if the plan was executed and I think the plan was even, this was the plan even if Man City had a full roster and a full healthy squad, and they executed it, and they executed it to a T. A lot of block shots, not a lot of shots on target. If any, I think the total number was 3. I think Arteta's quite happy, and he'll take it as a win, and then hopefully he can scrape points away. They are facing Man U.
I do want to jump right in on that, though. In my opinion, though, and this has been some criticism coming to Arsenal where they weren't the team to come out, but I would argue they probably had the two best chances at the game. Aside from the Ake header, which was very early on, which felt more like a mistake. It just kind of lucked out, randomly hit his head. He wasn't too aware of what happened and just kind of fell into David Raya's hand. If you look at the other two moments that kind of scream out to me, where one... towards the middle of the second half where Arsenal started to grow in the game a little bit more, the Saka cross to Gabriel Jesus, that was a clear tap-in opportunity for him where he should have got onto it. Missed opportunity there. And then as well as in the 86th minute, Trossard on the break should have played that one-time pass across to Martinelli to be able to go for a tap-in. If either of those opportunities go Arsenal's favor, Arsenal coming out of this game with Arteta looking like a genius, everything worked out well for them, and they stay at the top of the table, right? Unfortunately, soccer doesn't always go your way. Football doesn't always go your way. But they did have those moments where they could have gone for it. And I think, in my opinion, if you look at one individual player who I thought was great on the day in terms of his work ethic, willing to jump into tackles, willing to be able to kind of take that chance, was Odegaard, where there were a couple, I feel like, more opportunities where he could have found his teammates running in through behind, especially Kai Havertz, where there were opportunities where he was potentially right in behind, but that final pass wasn't there, which was a lot for Manchester City's fair, so it wasn't as if it was all one-sided. However, I feel like of the two teams that did actually create more of those opportunities to get a shot on target in those areas, it was more so Arsenal. So even though, again, I think it's a positive for them that they tied in a ways, I think that in some ways, on the other side of the coin, they should be disappointed because they, I would argue, were the better team that created more goal-scoring opportunities, and they did not win. So it's kind of a double-edged sword in that way, a catch-22 of how you would feel, in my opinion.
I am a little bit... I would be less on the Arsenal feel unlucky to not have come up with the win. I think a tie is a very, very fair result. And I guess extrapolating it to the Champions League, I think that's what separates Arsenal from, I think, if looking back from it now, I think they have every chance to win the Premier League because they no longer face one of the big teams. They can, and they have been going into town against these smaller clubs. But I think the separator for them, and we'll see what happens in the offseason now, is do they have that big game player, Osimhen, Rafael Leao, some a type of that caliber player that will put them over the top in next season's Premier League or next season's Champions League. So that's interesting to me. But let's focus straight on Aston Villa and City, who play each other next in a couple of days, actually, Gio. And that's actually a big turnaround for Man City. They're of course going to be at the Etihad, though. Even though Aston Villa won against Wolves this past weekend, they are going to be missing Watkins potentially with an injury. So that being said, it is I think it might be third versus fourth if the standings look right to me. Yep, third versus fourth. Quite a big game still. Both teams looking to get as many points as possible. What are your initial predictions from this game, Gio?
I think we typically say, once City has a tough performance, they always come back with a vengeance and kind of destroy the next team. We can't say that anymore because they've proven us wrong by not doing that multiple times this season. And Villa being as great as they are this season, I just don't see that happening either. Obviously, can we expect it not to happen? We can't. Just because City is still City, we'll give them that much. But do we expect it? Not really. Now, where does the offense come from without your guy up front? I think they're going to struggle a little. Yes, they do score from the midfield quite a bit, but that's because you have a guy like Ollie Watkins up front who's making those decoy runs, creating that space for you. So the midfield is able to push up a little higher and take those shots outside the box. I don't think they're going to have that luxury now that Watkins is out. And if he is out, then yeah, that's definitely going to be the case. And Man City's going to take that as advantage and try to keep them in their half for as long as possible and kind of do what they did with Arsenal and just kind of create the opportunities within their half, recycle, rinse, and repeat like they did. And I think they will do well, especially if they get Stones and Kyle Walker back, because they're going to be itching for all 3 points at this point.
Yep, I think so as well. The fact that as well, Ollie Watkins you're missing that outlet against City, and he's been so good in transition, especially, and it looks like that's really the way to hit Man City, Mac, really in transition and pick your moments. You have as well Leon Bailey, who is very capable, Diaby, who scored against Wolves 8 goals this season already, so those types of strong runners coupled with Watkins would have been a real problem for City, but I think at this point they just don't have enough, especially at the Etihad, to overcome that. What are your thoughts, Mac?
Ollie Watkins may end up playing, so I don't want to kind of burn the bridge and say, oh yeah, there's no shot because he's not playing. He very much could, but I do agree, and I think you said the key word there, transition. Those transitional moments are where Aston Villa excel in. I would argue more than almost any other team in the Premier League, and that's how you're going, in my opinion, to get the most joy when you're playing away at the Etihad. And Arsenal tried to do that if we're compare the most recent result. But I think, to be honest, Aston Villa are better than that at Arsenal in a lot of ways. So maybe in those moments they make the right decision, something that they're more accustomed and are used to week over week in how they play football. For me, I think the question will be is how high does the defensive line of Aston Villa play? Because if they play in a similar low block to what Arsenal did, you may have seen a kind of template. Okay, here's how we can kind of nullify some of the key players on the other team. But Aston Villa so far this year, as we've seen, we've enjoyed, ridiculed, but it's created a lot of fun moments for us. So at the end of the day, I think we all generally like it. They play quite high a line. And I think that is going to kind of feed into giving Man City more opportunities where instead of necessarily playing against two bank forwards of a low block, if Aston Villa comes to the game with a high press, a mid block, you're going to see them instead get those transitional opportunities against them. And that's where I feel like you might to see more of the Kevin De Bruyne giving it to the Erling Haaland, which we haven't seen, I would argue, over the last couple of match weeks in the Premier League for them. So I think it's a very interesting matchup. I think both teams have the tools in the tool belt to expose problems with the other team. Of course, as everyone should, going to favor City in this matchup. But like I said, I think Aston Villa, if they do come to the game with more of a reserve template that they've done so far this year, are very solid in their defense. Doug Luiz has to have a 10 out of 10 performance, which he can. I think that the Leon Baileys, potentially the Ollie Watkins, even if he's not there, I would say a kind of two, not really strikers, but false nines in a way, of Leon Bailey and Diaby playing beside each other on the break. I don't think you necessarily need that presence to be able to escape. As long as you once you get back possession, you shift it long behind the wing backs or the wide backs who are really center halves for City. I think those two can feast. So I think this should be a very exciting game. I think there should be much more opportunities than we've seen from this Man City team going to playing Aston Villa at home. So very excited to see what happens.
Yeah, and of course, Holland's going to be salivating looking at that high line from Aston Villa, so I expect him to get at least a couple of chances there. But let's move on to another game that saw Liverpool go top of the Premier League. I'll just quickly summarize it. Of course, Liverpool won 2-1 at home against Brighton. Welbeck, of course, the boy Welbeck opened the scoring with a fantastic strike. I watched the highlights back and looked at Jurgen Klopp's reaction, and he was just like, hey, what are you going to do about it? What can you do about it with that type of finish? But I think you have to credit Liverpool the way they were able to come back and not just, of course, tie it, but win it with a big number of chances at home, which is something that I think is going to be critical in the run-in for Liverpool. Those games at home where they are able to get the crowd behind them and get the 20 plus shots or chances in the game, that will be very critical for Liverpool. I guess not much on Brighton other than they're a little bit of an inconsistent team, given the fact that they've had European commitments. But of course, this means Liverpool are first in the Premier League. 2 points separates them between them and Arsenal. I believe. And of course, I think it's come out that they are now favorites to win the Premier League. Can they do it, or will they bottle it from this point on? Of course, 9 games separates them. What are your takes from Liverpool?
They are the favorites, and they should be the favorites. I think you would argue the run in the rest of these tabs is quite equivalent, but they got the points lead, right? They don't have the goal difference on Arsenal, but they have 2 points on them, 3 points on City, but the goal difference on City as well. So I think net result after this past weekend, City knocked down to, let's say, I would argue the third favorites after Liverpool, then Arsenal. That's my personal opinion. But I think, as Bernardo Silva said after the Man City game, next week everything can change because you don't know how the results are going to play out, because the competition seems much more level, where you can see more unexpected results. I think my concern for Liverpool, to be transparent, is the amount of games they play away from Anfield for the rest of the season. It looks quite daunting, where they play at Old Trafford against Manchester United, at Fulham, at Spurs, at Aston Villa, at West Ham. All those away games for me are very, very tough. Their only major home game, I would argue, is a derby against Everton. So let's knock that away. But the reason why I'm more worried about the performances away from home is that so far this year, Liverpool had to come back from and win from falling behind 7 times, which is a record for them. And even though Salah scored in this most recent game against Brighton, he had a ton of chances and wasn't able to convert as many as he should have. So if you're having inconsistent Salah, you're getting behind, how many times can you kind of roll the dice and still come out with the win? So I'd be very worried going into those matchups if they don't come out more so on a stronger front foot, as they've done so far this season. Because not to say that they've been lucky, because they've been a very good team. There's a reason why they're first. There's the reason why they're favorites. But if they start off behind the 8 ball as consistently, I would argue, as so far they've done this season, that's going to put them in a position where they may end up dropping more points than we may expect. So that's how I feel like, again, how it potentially could break out, the nerve I have of Liverpool, considering what happened in the Brighton game. But with that being said, they should still be and are the favorites.
I think one of the things that I'll point out, which of course Klopp had mentioned in his post-match conference for the games against Brighton, is they looked like they had a better performance against a De Zerbi Brighton team this time around compared to previous seasons. And I'm not sure if you recall, because of course you guys aren't Liverpool fans, but myself being a Liverpool fan, the game against De Zerbi's Brighton last season, pretty sure Liverpool lost, were outplayed, and the press looked non-existent for Liverpool. In this game, it looks completely different. and Liverpool's midfield has come through, and now you have McAllister and Endo playing quite well. Szoboszlai is getting there, but I'm not sure if he's the missing piece or someone else should be coming in for his place. But that being given that the midfield is looking better, Salah came back, missed a lot of chances, but scored. And of course, you have Alisson Becker and Virgil van Dijk at the back there. Gio, is this enough for Liverpool to, go on and win the rest of their games, or do you still think Liverpool not quite there yet? Considering still, of course, there's a lot of new players and new faces on the squad.
They will. They do have enough, and I say that because it's all hands on deck now. They know what's at stake. They understand. Obviously for the sentimental value of it being Klopp's last season, I think everybody's just bought in. Whether you play a big role, whether you play a small role, whether you play 5 minutes, 2 minutes, you come in as a time killing sub. I think everybody's just really bought in. They've kind of scratched all the tough losses out of their memory, like that game against Man U. It doesn't really matter to them because at the end of the day, the trophy they want is the league title, and I think they are all bought into the system now, and are just gunning for it. They see it as, if they don't win, they'll see it as an opportunity loss because obviously, of the result of Arsenal Man City. But even then, Szoboszlai, if you don't mind me speaking on him very quickly, I thought he was great. Last game. I thought he didn't force balls into the box when there was nobody in there. The pass leading up to Salah's goal, I think, was great. Again, that's an opportunity for a lot of wingers to kind of swing the ball in and hope, a head kind of connects onto it. He was very good with his decision making. Sometimes, we couldn't say that throughout the season, and I think he's just really matured his game slightly in the past couple of weeks. That's going to allow him to kind of be that focal point. If not a focal point, one of the strongest contributors to Liverpool's title race.
Yep. So we're gonna have to wait and see because, of course, now the Premier League title race is truly one that will have all eyes on it, and it's gonna hopefully come down to the last match day. So we'll keep an eye out for that. Let's take a quick break here, boys, and then we'll be back covering some more Premier League action from this weekend. So stay with us, guys. Welcome back to Also Footy, guys. We are going to continue our podcast now discussing another big match that took place this weekend, and that's, of course, Newcastle 4, West Ham 3. Gio, crazy game. We saw, of course, Newcastle take the lead, then West Ham take a very comfortable lead, and then ultimately they lost it to Newcastle late. And so a lot of back and forth in this game, a lot of back and forth between these two teams, I guess, in terms of standings in the Premier League. But ultimately, what were your thoughts on this game?
Definitely exceeded my expectations. I said 3-2, and they gave me 4-3. I knew there were going to be goals, but not this many goals, which was fun. Did I think all of Anthony Gordon's, fouls were fouls? I feel like there was a little bit of a dive for the second one. Obviously scramble in the box. But yeah, no, I thought West Ham fumbled. Obviously, you play with a 3-1 lead. You have to learn how to park the bus. I think that's an underrated sort of tactic that people use. Shout out Jose. The great one, who is the master at it. So, when you have a lead, there's no need to go chase the game. There's no need to open up the field for everyone. Low block, clear the ball, let them do all the running. There's no harm in that. You don't have to run anymore. You keep Antonio on the pitch to maybe hold the ball up in the in the opposition corner to kill a couple of minutes here and there, but it was a fumble. Which makes Mohamed Kudus's celebration to the ball boy exponentially worse because he didn't win. Had he won, we'd all be laughing exponentially more. But that's not the case. So yeah, I thought Newcastle did well to keep in the game. Harvey Barnes, obviously the quote-unquote super sub of the game, came in, and obviously we know how good he was on Leicester. Struggled with injuries a lot this season. But again, as soon as he's back, they know what he's capable of, and he was that super sub and smashed that last goal, which was a fantastic take to seal it for Newcastle.
Yeah, I mean, where else do we go? I guess quickly, I wanted to point out two players from each side that really stood out to me, and of course, I'm gonna bring up not Harvey Barnes, even though he did fantastically well to score those two goals, but of course Anthony Gordon and Alex Isak from Newcastle. The ball that Isak plays over to it was Harvey Barnes for his first goal. I think the goal that tied it. Fantastic from his point of view, a striker that you can see can do it all. And then on the flip side, for West Ham, Paquetá and Kudus, just great game overall. Paquetá with the ball over the top for Antonio for his first goal. I think I've saw a lot of tweets recently saying Paquetá is a disguised Real Madrid player. It looks like he's a Galactico playing for West Ham because he has that quality, but also his quick thinking to put Bowen through. And I think in the second goal, but as well, Kudus himself being able to just come straight into the squad this season and just perform so well. Just have to shout those two guys up. But Mac, is there any other player that stood out for you?
If we go to individual players, it has to be Mikel Antonio for West Ham. He's had, I would argue, a struggle so far this season. He's come back from injury, and this was the second game row that he started, scoring 2 match weeks in a row against Aston Villa, and now, of course, Newcastle. I think for me, individually, he's kind of a bellwether of what this West Ham team contention should really be going forward. Let's even argue and say after a David Moyes era. Because if you have a front three of Mohamed Kudus, Paquetá, Bowen, do you need a striker, or now you sacrificing too much defensively if you do bring a player on top of them? Because we've had Bowen in that position before, where now more so you can add maybe a third midfielder or an extra centre half, and you're playing with a back five or a lower defensive midfield 3, and allows James Ward-Prowse to join up. So his role, I think, is very interesting of what that potentially looked like. He played well on this day, scored his goal, but I think what they do with that striker position, if not David Moyes stays, I think is going to be, now we're going to know their approach going forward. Are they going to be more aggressive, defensive, or are they going to try and change their style of play to be a little bit more expensive and take a little bit more risk? Because that's what cost in this game, is where they stuck onto, I would argue, that front four too long, even though defensively what that gives you, I would argue, is almost nothing between that front four. So you need a little bit more help in that area, especially after you get that lead. Whereas Newcastle, to be able to talk about them quickly, is their injuries. They just keep piling up. As soon as they get somebody back, somebody else is out, right? Where, oh, great, Harvey Barnes is out, Anthony Gordon has a red card. He's going to mix the next couple of games. Oh, it looks like I think it was Timo Livramento is just returning from injury. Jamal Musels goes out with a cruciate ligament injury, and he's out till 2025, it looks like. So that's just on top of course, Sven Botman, I would argue the best defender so far of the season for them. And it also has a cruciate ligament injury as well. So he might be out for some time after the ongoing surgery. So for them, again, my big shout going to the season was Eddie Howe could potentially get fired if things don't go well. Things haven't gone well, but he is a defensive position. It's not his fault. All of his players are always injured. And to be fair, I can't really argue that too much, but they just had that extra little bit of offensive flair than West Ham did, and kind of outlasted and survived through that game, which got them all 3 points. And full credit to Harvey Barnes, who deserves, I would argue, the man of the match, because as soon as they came on, that after that first cross that he made great contact on from Anthony Gordon, he was right in the game, right heart of it, right up to pace of a high intensity game like that. So even though you had the highs and lows, mistakes, moments of magic, Newcastle, even with all their injuries, had that just a little bit more, and again, deserved to walk away with all 3 points, which they did.
I mean, I have to quickly just mention that it is quite interesting how Anthony Gordon would miss the next match against Everton, his former club. So I just wanted to point that out, because you guys know how I feel about how he left Everton. But very, very stupid to concede that second yellow card to get that second yellow card. Sorry, and he'll miss a game, which sucks to see because he's been playing so well. I don't think they'll particularly miss him, considering it's Everton. Nor disrespect to them, but yeah, players missing. It's starting to. I mean, it's gone this way for them the whole season, Newcastle. So maybe it's something they've gotten used to. But just feel bad for West Ham. Like Gio mentioned, they had such a good lead. You're David Moyes. You just gotta park the bus. But they threw on Calvin Phillips, who I'm sure you guys have seen, gave away the penalty. Did not have himself a good time playing for West Ham, and it makes it even worse for him because there's now so much pressure on him to perform to get back onto the England team come the Euros, and it's not the best environment for him because West Ham are a team that's gonna sit back and he's just gonna need to be he's gonna be asked to be a destroyer. Whereas if he played for a team like Spurs, he could show off why he deserves to be and his ability to sort of control games and make things tick in midfield benefit the England team in the Euros. But not sure how that will play out for him. Hopefully he can bounce back from that, but we'll see what happens there. I guess we'll quickly then preview a big match coming up this week, and that's Chelsea versus Manchester United. Just want to read out that, of course, Chelsea tied Burnley 2-2 in their match this past weekend. Of course, Man U also tied, but at Brentford this weekend. And I guess I'll toss it to you first, Mac. Out of those two performances, which one was better? Which one was worse? Is there something that stood out to you from either of these teams and their respective games?
See, we could do a whole podcast just on these two games for these two teams and preview this one match. I feel like there's so much meat on the bone. I would be stuffed. There's because you could make the argument that both of these performances are absolutely horrendous for completely different reasons. If you can make the argument that for Chelsea, you tied against a 10-man team, Burnley, that's currently sitting 18th in the Premier League in relegation. They had 10 men, and I would argue they should have won the game if Jay Rodriguez could finish that header towards the end of the game. But Manchester United, who just got off beating Liverpool, all the highs of winning against your I would argue your arch rival in the FA Cup, to knock back arguably their greatest managers, final season, and what do people call them, their last dance. Yes, you have those moments, but then you literally pull up and show nothing at Brentford. A big old goose egg, but you're still lucky enough and fortunate enough to get the lead, and you concede it not even 2 minutes later. So I don't know. I think these, if you ask me, Ray, and I'll be honest with you, I think in terms of individual performance from quote unquote big six teams, which I think we should have the conversation, is Chelsea no longer a big six team? I think that's fair. I think they should be relegated from that. They should not get that tag no more, the hashtag anymore whatsoever. But I think these two performances from both these teams go in the Hall of Fame of worst performances with part of a horrible overall season, respectively, for both teams. So again, piss poor on both ends. And actually, I feel bad for Burnley and Brentford because they're both in relegation races and needed the points, and I would argue deserved all three against both these teams.
I want as well.
What about you?
Sorry.
Sorry.
To point out that Chelsea very lucky to have gone a man up with the red card for the Burnley defender. Company was sent off, arguing that call, and I think very rightly so. But yeah, Mac, Gio, what are your thoughts on these two sort of results?
Do I have to speak on it? Look, this could have been great. This could have been a great start to the last 9 games of the Premier League season. A guy like Mason Mount comes back from injury, scores a game winner to take all 3 points in extra time.
First goal for him for the club.
First goal for the club at that. So that momentum swing for a player, for a club, could have been massive going into the last 9 games. Obviously sitting in 6 points behind Spurs. I just don't get how you let that even get close to Ivan Toney. You just play the low block. I don't understand why the game has to open up so late in the game. You just give up all these opportunities. You don't have to go. You don't have to add a second. You're not playing for a goal differential. What are you doing? Your Your goal differential has been negative for a majority of the season, just got to 0. So I don't know where you think you're going to get all these goals from and for what reason. You're not going to win and jump places based on your goal differential at this point. So it's tough. It's tough. Obviously, as a fan, it hits a little harder, but I thought it was poor game management late in the game. When you have a lead that late in the game, it's killing time. You park the bus, low block, kill time. Kick the ball as far as you can. Hold the ball down in the corner for as long as you can. Those simple things. Like again, like West Ham, they should have done it. But did they? No. Did they deserve the win then? No, they did not. So cheers to Brentford for scoring a late goal. And sick for grabbing yourselves a point.
Yeah, of course, I do have to quickly talk about the flow of the game for Man U, where Brentford really sat off them in the first half and let Man U come at them with the ball, and it showed that Man U aren't as free flowing as it seems out to be on paper, and that's, I think, one of the reasons they haven't been performing as well against teams in the lower half of the table, where they're expected to dominate the game and create chances from possession. And that's actually what helped them against Liverpool, I think, because Liverpool leave themselves exposed. This match against Chelsea, though, Mac, it's really, really hard to tell, because I can't remember exactly the stat. I'm actually missing the stat right now, but Man U have conceded over 120 shots in I think the games that they played in March, which is crazy to think about that. But are Chelsea that much better if they get 30 shots? Do they get 5 on target? And if it's not Cole Palmer, is there anyone else that's going to hit the target for them? So I'm really not sure what to expect from this game, Mac. So I'll ask you, what can we expect from this Man United Chelsea game taking place this midweek?
I think nothing. I think I saw, to put it in this way, I saw a meme on Twitter, as it were, where this game is literally two clowns throwing punches at each other. You never know what could happen. It's not that I thought it was funny, because it was funny, but I think it's an apt representation, because I don't know what to expect. Anything is possible. Is this Manchester United team kind of what Spurs were last year, which you always talked about? I apologize, Gio. I don't mean to compare Man U to Spurs, but they have a great performance and then a stupid performance, a great performance, then a horrible performance. They can't make up their mind. What's going on here, right? Are they that version? Because if so, by that logic, they should play very well. But then the weird part is Chelsea seem to play to the level of their opposition. So if Man United are playing much better, then Chelsea will step up. Or if Man United are piss poor, will Chelsea be like, you know what, we can do that today too? I don't know. One thing, and I understand from a Chelsea fan's perspective, it's like, what is the one positive for a Chelsea fan right now? If I throw it out there at you, you'd probably say Cole Palmer, no? So Cole Palmer has 38 goals and assists combined so far this season, and only 5 of those have led to them gaining points. So he for me, great positives, but it's kind of like, and I know this is a horrible comparison, and I don't mean to kind of twist the knife in some ways, but it's like Kyle Kuzma bagging 30 points for the Washington Wizards. Who cares? Like, someone has to do it, to a certain extent. Like, you're given that many opportunities, you have those many shots, something's going to turn up lucky for somebody. So I don't know what to expect coming out of this game. I think, though, the good part, though, is that considering how, and this is what I do lean Manchester United, if you're asking me, is where Chelsea are open enough for you can potentially kind of cut them through. And I think the game is going to be a little bit more chaotic than some of the games we've seen this weekend, and you're similar more so towards the Newcastle West Ham game, which would be great for neutrals, not so great for their probably respective fan bases. But I think that's going to help put Manchester United in positions where, yes, we may give up, and what their methodology is, like, we're going to give up a lot of shots. I think they have the third most amount of shots against in the Premier League so far this season. I think behind Sheffield United and Luton, something like that. They're in towards the bottom, very, very bottom of the table. But their thought process is, we're giving very low XG chances away, so it's not too bad. And considering how poor Chelsea are in front of goal, if you're giving them a lot of low XG chances, they're going to underperform that even more. Whereas Manchester United should be given a little bit more of a front foot to get at, I would say, a very weak Chelsea defense, and should be easier game for the Garnachos, for the Højlunds, for the Rashfords, to be able to not just actually get chances themselves, which they weren't able to do against Brentford, but potentially put those away as well. So I do lean United because of that, where the edge of chaos, I do believe Man U probably have a better front three, so that will probably edge out in their favor, in my opinion.
I don't disagree. Man, you have the better front three, but at this moment, I'm not exactly sure. I don't want to put you in the spot, Gio, but I think it. Looking at the way Man U set up against Brentford, I think it was Rashford, Højlund, and Garnacho playing. But I think Garnacho started on the right, but of course his natural position, he's going to shift over on the left. That kind of takes into Marcus Rashford's space, and it kind of negates both of them. Is there a way both of them can fit in this system? Should one of them be dropped for someone else on the right? I don't know. What do you expect from this game, Man United and Chelsea?
I do expect a Man U result. Now, am I discounting Chelsea? No. Yes and no. Their offense doesn't generate if Cole Palmer doesn't have a game. So, if he doesn't get going, if the ball doesn't get to him, how are the other guys really going to contribute? Are they able to rely on Sterling to kind of finish? Sterling, is either super on or super off, and he loves to miss a easy opportunity, or lacks a little bit of decision making in the final third. So I think if the game were to open up, I think Man U does have a very good chance of beating Chelsea, which I think it will open up. So yeah, I would slightly favor Man U at this point. And to your question, in this game, I think they should still go with Rashford. Sorry, but in the future, one of them needs to be sold, and it's probably not Garnacho at this point. You can get fair. Hey, at this point, you can still get fair money out of Marcus Rashford. So I think going forward to build the project, I think they shouldn't overlook the idea of letting one of them go, particularly Marcus Rashford.
I don't disagree.
They should have sold him last summer.
Exactly.
The issue was the timing. They should have sold him last summer.
But to that, sorry, I just have to add. Now, since a Mr. Kylian Mbappe has a chance of going to Real Madrid, does Marcus Rashford start a new life in Paris and play on the left side of that Parc des Princes stadium? So there are openings. Hopefully that fall in favor of Man U. But just to throw it out there, those are some ideas. I think PSG does have the money to kind of afford Marcus Rashford, or what he's expecting in terms of pay wages. So yeah.
And it's the rumor du jour right now. I think that's the odds on favor of where he'll end up going.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, but we'll definitely revisit that towards the end of the season, and of course keep an eye on that throughout the offseason. But guys, this concludes our podcast for today. If you guys like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social media. That's at @house_of_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email as well. houseoffooty@hotmail.com is our email. Next time you hear from us will be Thursday, when we cover the midweek action from this Premier League, this midweek Premier League action. But until then, thank you, Matt, for joining us.
Peace out.
Thank you, Gio.
Take it easy, guys.
See you guys soon.